Today's interview is with founder and CEO of Rōnin Tactics, Tulam.
I served in a special missions unit where I did special reconnaissance. I started off in Asia and then I fought the wars in the Middle East. My whole life was war. My whole life was combat. I was born in these conditions.
And we are joined today in his war room where all his military accolades are and the inspiration of how he became who he is today. And we go through all of that, the beautiful story of how his mother took him and his family across oceans to eventually reach the United States of America to protect them for safety.
My mother shielded my body from incoming artillery fire in the morning of my birth. At this stage of the war, American troops had left Vietnam. My mother, her strength, one more day, when people were dying, she held on to one more day.
Today's video is always sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, where you can get the t-shirts, the journals are coming soon, and also the poster linked in the description, where you can get 10% off using code STOIC at checkout. Let's dive into this amazing interview. So, just for people who don't know, just introduce yourself of what you do.
My name is Tulam. I am the CEO and founder of Rōnin Tactics, where my wife and I, we travel around the United States. We teach law-abiding citizens, we teach military and law enforcement. We've been doing this for 7 years. We also offer my time in the military, design, and we manufacture equipment for law enforcement, military, and law-abiding citizens. So, founder of Rōnin Tactics. So Rōnin Tactics is broken down into merchandise and is broken down in training. And we also do the entertainment where we film motion capture for Call of Duty character Rōnin, and also Wear-A-Face and for Springfield, where we field test their new products.
So I think what we'll do is dive into where you grew up. But I think instead of me asking you like a standard question, I think as much detail as you want to go into, from the moment you were born, from what you've been told through family, and to see where it takes us, and then I'll track back if we need to.
There's nothing more important in life as a warrior to be stronger than the conditions and circumstances that are presented to us. Nietzsche, the philosopher, once said that chaos is needed in oneself to give way to a dancing star. Without chaos, there will be no armies to fight, no mountains to climb or dragons to slay. Without chaos, there will be no realization to one's actual truth. You see, I was born in chaos. I was born on a cold cement floor in the basement Saigon Hospital. My mother shielded my body from incoming artillery fire in the morning of my birth. At this stage of the war, American troops had left Vietnam. And I was born on the losing side of the war, a war between communism and democracy. Democracy lost. The communists, they imposed their ideologies on us. At 3 months old, I lost my freedoms, I lost my country. We lived underneath communist occupation. My uncles that served alongside Americans were immediately brought out to re-education camps. These were torture camps. Any person that fell ill, hurt, injured from these hard labor camps were brought out into the jungles and quietly murdered. My uncles that served alongside them were imprisoned. And by the time we received them in the States, had no skin on the bottom of their foot, defeated, broken. See, the communists seek to impose their ideals on us, and they broke us as human beings. We escaped genocide when I was 3 years old on an overstuffed wooden fishing boat with hundreds of thousands of other fleeing refugees. At that time, refugees were escaping when Americans left through government planes, any planes that they can get their hands on, helicopters. Some walked out to neighboring countries, and we were the boat people. There was an estimated 400,000 refugees died at sea. But yet on this night, My mother loaded us in the basement of this wooden boat. What was supposed to be a 2-day trip from Vietnam to Malaysia, a route that's often taken. They, in order to fit more refugees on, they took water and food supplies off the boats to put more bodies so more refugees can escape. It was such a lucrative business to stop the fleeing refugees, to board the boats and to kill the men, to rape the women and enslave the children. It was such a lucrative business that it brought in neighboring countries, pirates. It was estimated that many refugees died at sea because of these bandits. Somehow, under the cover of darkness, we escaped the pirates and we made our way into Malaysia, where the Malaysian Coast Guard stopped us at gunpoint, shot at us, boarded our boats, roped the line, and pulled us back out into the South China Sea, further and further into the sea, into hopelessness. When there was no more hope, then they cut the rope. Then they shot our engine, and they left us there to die. What turned out to be a 2-day trip, we drifted. My mother said that we roughly were out at sea for 30 days. The lack of food and water, people died, suffered. It's common practice amongst fleeing refugees to carry poison in their belongings. The poison was to minister to their child so they would not endure a life of slavery, torture. I think back to my mother as we were dying on this boat, drifting, dying. Bodies were being thrown overboard. 3 years old, can you believe it? As we were drifting, I think back, one more day. What my mother had to endure, one more day. As we were dying in front of her, the ulcers growing on our legs. My mother, her strength, one more day. When people were dying, she held on to one more day. Well, she didn't poison us, and we got caught up in a storm. Huge tropical storm. She said this storm was so fierce that we should have been capsized on this small little wooden fishing boat. Further and further we drift, she said the waves were so massive. And she was prepared for death that night. But somehow the storm washed us further out into the South China Sea. And the next day, when the storm broke, we were drifting. And somehow this storm led us into a path, the lat-long coordinates of a Russian supply boat. South China Sea. Can you imagine how big that ocean is? Somehow this storm led us into this path of this Russian supply boat. Now, the Russians, their ideology, the communism was what took us out of our country. We lost our freedoms, our country, we were escaping genocide. But yet this Russian boat didn't look at us as the enemy. They chose humanity, and they saved us. We were barely alive. One by one, they took us onto their boats, gave us the medical treatment. And after a day, they put us back on our wooden fishing boat. The smell, the foul smell of urine, feces, hopelessness. We went back into these basements. Our captain, my mother said this, said thank you to the captain of the Russian supply boat. And he said that, don't thank me. Because if I would have spotted you going into Vietnam, I would have drugged you back into Vietnam. But since you're here, I'm bounded to save you. I think that lesson, when I hear that lesson, because I was too young to really remember it, you know. But that lesson, as I reflect through the years, is this: no matter what culture, what country, there's always a good and there's always a bad, right? And that we shouldn't look at one another, culture, color, background, saying you're the enemy. We should look at each other with humanity. And that's what they did. And I was taught that at a very young age. Less than humanity. They roped us back in and they pulled us into Indonesia. You know, my mother said there's, Indonesia's a multiple chain of islands, They pulled us into Indonesia and they docked us, and she said, in the end processing process, she said that people died of dehydration on the beach. Can you imagine? Surviving that and dying on the beach when all they have to do is show compassion to us. My mother said that the Indonesian guards showed no compassion as we sat there on the beach, 100 plus degrees. Can you imagine? After 30 days at sea, depleted, dying. And here we are at safety, you bet. Yet a human being cannot even show humanity, can't even save a person that almost died. And all they had to do is give them water. But yet we wait on this beach. And then finally we in-process the refugee camps. Let me explain to you the refugee camps. Hundreds and thousands of people are in these refugee camps, stripped from dignity, country, stripped from everything. With the good, there's the bad. Amongst us, there's people that seek to take, murder, kill in the refugee camps. A safe haven for refugees. Yet they're drug out into the jungles, raped, killed by bandits in the jungles, dead bodies. My brother, because these refugee camps, people, let me explain, these refugee camps are grass huts in the middle of a jungle. You survive on your own. So we had to get, firewood. And my brother, was a little older than I was at the refugee camps. And he reminded me growing up, he reminded me how many dead bodies there were around these refugee camps. Young boy, picking up firewood, seeing dead bodies. We endured these refugee camps. We had to do what we had to do to survive in these refugee camps. During the war, during the escape, my grandfather asked my mother, if you were to survive this escape, there's a slim to no chance, but if you were to survive this escape, I want you to promise me that you would do everything you can to become an American. You see, during the Vietnam War, an American Special Forces Green Beret officer who was fighting the war, and his G base, a camp, Special Forces camp, with commandos, got overran by the North Vietnamese. Overran. Everybody died. They ran behind my uncle as he was fighting, and they stabbed him with an SKS bayonet into his lungs. He was medevaced out, and he made it to Saigon Hospital, where my grandfather would come to visit because my aunt met this American Special Forces officer. She nursed him to life. And then the thing was, my grandfather said there's no way that he would make it. He would die. Yep, this Green Beret made it. And he married my aunt. We took her back to the States. So my grandfather asked my mother, if we can, we must unite with your sister in America, the land of the free. And this Special Forces man, a hero. You need to reunite with him. He's a good person. And America is the land of the free. Promise me this. And my mother said, I promise. So she held on for a year and a half. A year and a half, can you believe it? We live in these refugee camps for a year and a half because of a promise. You know, she said other countries accept us. Australia, New Zealand, Canada. She's named off a few. But yet she held on to a promise. When people were dying, suffering, she held on to this promise, you know? So after a year and a half, my uncle finally sponsored the paperwork for us to get to America. It was very difficult at that time to get to America. You know, the refugee process. We came to North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina, right outside Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which is the home of the biggest special operations base in all of America. More commandos there than walks the face of America. One central location, the training grounds of the Green Beret Special Forces. See, I went there because my uncle was Special Forces. He was this officer and he was going through his command. So we lived in this, I remember this, we lived in this home, officer quarters. And I tell you, man, I never lived in such comfort. I never ate a meal every day, you know? So this was new for me. And I remember I walked down this hallway. You know, he had all his military accomplishments. Green Beret. I remember looking at all of it and just admiring how warrior that was. Didn't know what a warrior was at that time, you know. It's only 6. So eventually we moved out. You know, my father, my mother, my brother and I. And we moved into a very poor part of town. And we lived in a very small apartment, and the only furniture that we had was one used full-size mattress. None of our classmates or friends can even go there. We didn't have any, but nobody was invited because we were embarrassed. And they worked so hard, my parents. The refugees from their surrounding communities would donate us clothes to help us get on our feet. Clothes that are 3 generations. Holes in the clothes, holes in the shoes. Barely fits me. Holes that my mother would stay up late at night to fix. Shoes that she'll patch up so we can go to school. You know, I remember going to school. I was the face of this indigenous person. You know, and I was mocked. And I was picked on because I was poor and that my clothes smelled. So I was reminded every day how I didn't belong. It was a very hard time in my life, you know, growing up there. I want to put you on this bad day for me. You know, I was being picked on, I wasn't accepted. You know, we were called all sorts of names. And it was actually supported by the parents of these kids and the teacher because they didn't like refugees moving into their hometown. And second, I was the face of an unpopular war. It was very racist times in America back then. So substitute teacher days are my worst days, you know. They try to pronounce my name. My name's pronounced Tu Tung Lam. And a lot of people can't pronounce that. With this persistent substitute teacher try to pronounce my name, and that egged on the class to make fun of me. Throw paper at me and tell me how much I don't belong here. You know, on this really bad day, the substitute teacher said, boy, you need to go down to the principal's office. And he looked at the bully who started, and he said, you too. So I did. I went down to the principal's office, and the principal told me to sit in one corner, and the boy's going to sit in another. He said, your parents will come pick you up. And, you know, my mother didn't drive, so I knew I'd be sitting here for a while. And then finally, the mother of the bully showed up, and she demanded to know what's going on. And substitute teacher said, your son called that boy right there a chink. You know, know why it hit me harder that day than any other day. I'm reminded that every single day. But on this day, I was defeated. So the mother, she went and grabbed her son and she walked over to me, and I was looking at the ground, already defeated, demanding me to stare at her. So I stood up and she said something that, well, obviously I remember to this day. She said, "My son is right. You don't belong here. You need to go back home to your country." I don't have a country. I cried so hard that day that I started hyperventilating, and the principal said, "Boy, you're going to cry like that. You need to go out in the hallway." So I did. I went in the hall and cried. My mother, she never picked me up. And that night, I sat in that room on this used mattress. And I reflected on this day. My mother must have sensed something's wrong, because she came in and she said something to me that will carry me through the special forces. She said to me, "We will always have our bad days. Every one of us will have our bad days. But what did you learn from it? And who's the person you will become?" No, I didn't understand. All I felt was hate. All I saw was the insignificance in the world, the worst in humanity. And I wanted to give up on life. I didn't know what to do, but I knew there was something stronger than hate. I just, at the time, couldn't put how can you at that young of age, 9? So I continued to go to school, continued to get picked on, and at a certain point, my parents divorced. And eventually we moved into my future stepfather's home. He was Special Forces. He was a drill sergeant, I went from 0 discipline to 150 miles of discipline, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, raising the American flag, putting my hand over my heart, waking up to the ballad of the Special Forces. And our life was so strict, and we had dress codes and academics and, chores, many, many hours of chores, and a life that I never asked for, and I struggled. I struggled with this level of discipline. I'd never seen this level of discipline before. And I struggled. I remember I came home one day, I was doing my homework, and my mother, a year passed since my parents' divorce. My mother came in with this cardboard box, and she said, "This is from your father, Haven't heard from my father in over a year." I was in this place that I never asked for, struggling with this level of discipline. Now, my stepfather is a very loving man, very strict. He was a great guy, taught me what I need to learn, but I, as a human being, struggle with that level of discipline. So I was having a really hard time in my life, and now I was getting picked on and wasn't accepted. I was really defeated, My mother came in with the contents of this box. She said, "This is from your father." And I was so upset, I threw the box in a corner. Finished my homework, and I sat there and I looked at this box, and finally I built the courage to open up this box. And within the contents of this box, there was 4 VHS tapes, written in Vietnamese, dubbed. Couldn't read it back then, I was so young. So I randomly picked up a tape, I threw it in the VCR. It was the art of Budo, the combat side of being samurai. Iaido, the way of sword and mind. Bushido, the way of a warrior. To live this life of higher purpose, to not allow the conditions to influence you, because your why is so powerful. To live a life of Zen, Confucius. You fast forward that, right? I was 11. 2 things happened to me that year to change the trajectory of my life. I was being picked on, not accepted, no friends. remind me every day how poor I was, how indigenous I smelled. 11 years old, my uncle picked me up, and he must have seen something was wrong. He's taking me to Dairy Queen. My uncle asked me, just out of the blue, he said something to me that, well, obviously stuck to me. He said, too, there'll be days. There'll be days that people spit on you. There'll be days that people flick you off and push you down. You need to ask yourself, do you want to be a fucking commando today? The days that your bones ache. When you feel like your bones are about to shatter because the sheer load that you're carrying on your back through training to form yourself into a weapon. When you want to quit, you need to ask yourself, do you want to be a fucking commando? When it's cold outside and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you know the right thing to do is get up and run because you're a weapon that our country relies on. But it's comfortable and it's warm on this bed. You need to ask yourself, you want to be a fucking commando? I was 11 years old. I was so taken back. Commando. The special forces. A life of discipline. A warrior's life to be stronger than the conditions and circumstances you present. A life of purpose. Commando. Later on that year, my mother drove me across town, and now, we're not starving, so she cooked food for the refugees. And she helped out the needy. Hours we would drive. All day. Hours. And when we go there and she would give them food, they didn't even appreciate her. As we were driving back home, I told my mom, why, Mom? Why you drive all day long to deliver food to the people that don't even care about? They're not even thankful for you. She stopped the car because it got so real, And she said, son, no matter conditions, circumstances, if we can, we must help others. And in doing so, we create a better world. Very Confucius in mindset. You want the world to be a better place, it begins with you. I was, at that stage in my life, I was defeated, I was just a weak human being, picked on, told I didn't belong. Born in war and insurgency, escaped genocide, on a boat. Many people died, refugee camps, slept with rats. In America, where I wasn't accepted, I was this weak child. And I realized that at that age, that I didn't want to be that. So I was going to forge myself into a weapon. So Bushido became the way. Bushido. Bo means to stop evil, to intercept the spear, to go to war. She is the one, the chosen one who can walk this path. And Do is to take your whole life lesson to give back to sacred humanity. Bushido, a warrior's path. Commando, the special forces. De oppressor liberator, from oppressed man to free man, literally translated, to free the oppressed. To be a force to go back and fight for the very people that I came from, the victims. To be this force, that was Bushido. That was the way. So I knew at 11 years old, I was going to be a commando. So I educated myself in the arts of war. I would retreat to the local libraries where I would study Taoism. And the reason why I studied Taoism, because the other 3 tapes were Bruce Lee tapes, and Bruce Lee believes in Taoism. And Taoism is to live in harmony with the universe, right? To live through life and respect God in the heavens. Taoism. To not look at the externals and try to change what is actual truth, but to live in harmony with this actual truth. Heaven, God, mountains. All these actual truths are there before us. So I was really grounded in that philosophy to live in harmony, but aware, right? So I studied the special forces, and then at 16, I started my training. It was in my timeline. I started training. So I started doing long country runs. I started doing more hand-to-hand combat. I was that kid, I was learning Budo, the art of being aware. So, I mean, literally, we were taking apart guns because my stepfather was special forces. I took apart in 1911. I was able to assemble this weapon. I study foreign weapons. I study Sanju. I study, tactics. I study unconventional warfare. And I was only in junior high. I had no friends. So I study this way. And then at 16, I started strengthening my body through physical pain, right? Through, physical training. And then at 18, I enlisted in the Army. Well, the thing was back then, you can't enlist straight into the Special Forces. You have to do your time, right? And then enlist in the Special Forces. So I went in and I was with the 82nd Airborne Division. And then I went to Ranger School early on. And then I went into the Long Range Reconnaissance Team. And then at 21, I applied for the Special Forces. Through a lot of my training, I was able to fast track the promotions. So I was able to get to the Special Forces really early. So 21 years old, I graduated Special Forces training. I was forward deployed, Okinawa, Japan. 21 years old, Okinawa, Japan. I want to put you on my first day. So proud. Young Green Beret, I remember I was so happy. My team was rotating back through from a mission. They were coming out of Laos, and I was going to meet them. And, they came back, and I had to report to work that morning. I was going to meet my team. I was so proud to be a Special Forces Green Beret. Starch uniform, spit shine boots, Green Beret. Knocked on the door, hi, my name is Stu, and they shut the door. Knocked on the door again, they opened the door, and you say, you're the new guy? I'm like, yeah, and they shut the door again. You see, in the Special Forces, it's a type A personality, right? And you as the new guy have to come in very humble, and you're going to be fucked with. And you're going to be told that you're not even worth being here. So, Okinawa, Japan, can you believe? Middle summer. 110 heat index, humidity, high humidity. I was in this, they call it the box, right? Because of how the shape of the compound was. It was extremely hot. So I sat there. I stood there, prayed rest. Outside the door, I stood there, prayed rest. Locked up. Hours I stood there, sweating. My starch uniform now is soaked with sweat. Then they finally opened the door. It was lunchtime. And I tried to talk to them. They said, we're not ready to talk to you yet. So they go. And they come back. Not even accepted. Can you imagine? So finally, when they closed the business, they opened up the door and they finally let me in. And they told me I'm the new guy and this is the way it is. You see, I was so proud to be a Green Beret. So I did what they told me. I humbled myself. I empty out the cup, as Bruce Lee would say. And I absorb what is wisdom. And they taught me. And I deployed all through Asia, right? And during that time too, I was a big martial artist. So I would fight on the sides in dojos. When my mother, a beautiful person, she, on the day of my high school graduation, she, I knew I was hurting her, but I was joining the Army. Gave up everything, so I can come here in America. Give me a new life. And here I am, want to go back to war. She escaped war. Gave me freedom, here I am, want to go back, So I promised my mother that I would graduate college because that meant a lot to her. So in the special forces, when I first joined, I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I would study for 2 hours. And then I would go to physical training. And then after physical training, I would start my duty day, which is very physical. Either you're blowing stuff up, you're going through a door, you're shooting, you're free falling in, you're doing jungle warfare. And after work is done, if work is done at that time, then I bow into a dojo and I train to 8 o'clock at night. And then at 9 to 10, to 11 or whatever, I would study again. And I did it. And it was so hard. So hard to go to college on the teams. But, I went to college. I fought in, no hose bar matches. I fought in tough man matches. I was trying, looking back now, why was it the way it was? Because I was so full of fire. I was born out of it, So the thing is this, as a child, I had this energy of hate. I was oppressed. I was told I didn't belong. So I had this energy, and then, in the A teams, I was able to extend this energy through combat and Budo, right? So, I went through different countries. I served in a special missions unit where I did special reconnaissance during the global war. I deployed all through the world, 27 countries. And, towards the end, I'll tell you, for me, it was towards the end of my career, I was going into Africa, the Horn of Africa. I started off in Asia, and then I fought the wars in the Middle East through multiple countries, and then we did a global pursuit. We hunted them down anywhere in the world. And then at a certain point, I went into Africa. You think back now, my whole life was war. My whole life was combat. I was born in these conditions. And here I was, really lost. Again, lost. The way of a warrior, the path of a warrior, it's so steep. And when you fall hard. It depends on how far you are in this path. And I was pretty far along. Let me put you on this day during the middle of the war. We were fighting the global war we were fighting a war in Iraq. At that stage of the war, Saddam has been captured and handed over to the Iraqi government. And this brought in a new reign of terror as Zarqawi and his army of foreign fighters came in and set up terror safe havens. What I'm saying, those were the bloody years, the war. And when you lose so much, when I say that is teammates. I was in Missouri, underneath the shaded tree, and I was watching my friend being lowered into his final resting place. My friend that I knew since I was 18. This beautiful human being being lowered into his final resting place, and I'm trying to grasp these emotions here. And in the distance, I can hear protesters, hiding behind what they believe is religion, protesting against a political movement within the military. Things that are outside of even our control. But yet here they are. Thanking God for this day. Thanking God for dead soldiers. So there was a point of lost that I picked up the sword of hate. That was the strongest energy that I found at that point. Hate. It makes you brave in a close quarters gunfight. Hate. Hate for the enemies. It makes you, in your pursuit of that, years, hate. And as I swung, this sword of hate, it embodied me. Every swing.
If you're enjoying this interview, please consider supporting us at Mulliganbrothers.com, where you can get the Inspire Change t-shirts and the poster with 10% off using code STOIC in the checkout. Let's dive back into the interview.
So there was one point when I was in Bunamajita, Cameroon, fighting Chad rebels and counter-poaching wars. I was drinking chai tea before we went out on our patrols. Beautiful sun. Beautiful morning. I could hear the wildlife, so beautiful. Haven't heard in years. Haven't been grateful for anything because I was consumed by hate. And I knew that this cloud of hate is going to come back, so I quickly pulled out my notebook and I wrote down the word peace, because that was my new journey. So, after we rotated out of Africa, I did, I was part of a counter-assault team, working with the Secret Service, protecting our former president. At that time, I was really messed up, right? During the war, we have been injured, right? And being who we are a national asset. So they're going to give you whatever it takes for you to perform. And at that time, I was prescribed painkillers. Wow. What a powerful energy. Numbs you. Not just from this physical pain that I feel, it numbs my mind from this emotional pain. So I did. And used it. And it numbed me. So at one point in my life, I was addicted to painkillers. Carrying one painkiller in my coin pocket. Waiting for the next feeling that I'm going to have to numb it. Wanted to hide. So after my time in service, I retired after 23 years of service. Honorably retired. I want to put you on this day. I was going to my retirement ceremony. I was really messed up. Drug addict. No purpose. Hated the world. Couldn't see the joy in the day, So I was putting on my uniform, medals, all the way up to my shoulders, all my times in service. Putting on my uniform. Not even proud. Remember that proud young Green Beret? He's gone. And it started to rain. I remember it was raining so hard that day. My mother flew in from North Carolina to see me. And I was driving. I was in such I was having anxieties, I was driving with my mother to the restaurant. I apologized to my mother. It's raining so hard. I wish today is better, Mom. I wish this. My mother said to me that, son, in the Asian culture, rain is needed to wash away the old. To make room for growth. And I was so blinded that day that I couldn't see what she was saying. Driving there, I was so in a bad place, So I retired. Let me tell you what I felt after I retired. 23 years. Saw the worst in humanity. Saw the worst in myself, right? I was in this drug addict. I was far off the path of the way, Bushido. Lost myself because hate took me off that path where I want to put you on this day. My wife, what an amazing person. She was with me through my whole career. Sacrificed it all. Here she is, this really accomplished person. And she was working up in Denver, Colorado, where she's this huge manager, right? Managing all these people. Master's degree, accomplished. Here I am, a 23-year commando, laying in a dark room, tired. I thought that, it's just, I was physically tired and I was injured, I thought I was it, but it wasn't. I had no purpose, and I was a drug addict. So I was sitting here in this dark room, right? And my wife was working up in Denver, and for hours, I would watch a TV that's off, hearing the voices of the world. And I heard this one voice just so strong. This voice was so strong over any other voice. It said, "Get up." So I did. I walked around this dark house. Somehow this energy led me to my war room. And, I have in this war room collection of books, collection of everything I accomplished in the military. Things all around the world, Literature of warrior, Bushido. Blindly, I opened up the book and I pulled out a book. It's the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. He was a Rōnin. He was born in the late 1500s and died in 1645 after writing the Book of Five Rings in a Buddhist cave. Redondo Cave, a spirit rock. Kumamoto, Japan. This Rōnin, I came upon his literature when I was 13, this Rōnin. In an old used bookstore, I found the Book of Five Rings when I was 13. It was covered in other books. And the only thing that drew me to it was the illustration of a samurai and two swords. So I pulled that book and I took it home and I set it up like it was a picture. And then, I want to put you on this story is that one summer I was really grounded because I was getting picked on in school and my grades dropped. I didn't tell my parents that I was getting bullied and picked on. So I hid my report card, right? And after a week of that lie, obviously I got to tell the truth, and it was horrible grades and I was grounded. But let me explain to you this summer. I was grounded in my room, and I remember it was raining that day, so my brother couldn't go outside, so he decided to pick on his little brother. He came in, he's a doctor now. He came in, he told me that all this warrior stuff is dumb, and he flicked the book onto the ground. And he reminded me how dumb I was to want to be this. He walked out. And I picked up the Book of Five Rings, and it was in that summer, it was when the first time I read it. Didn't understand a word of it, What do you mean a farmer and a merchant? What? Because I didn't understand feudal period Japan, so I educated myself in the library of feudal period Japan. So then I tried to understand the words from this Rōnin. And then, what it said when I opened up this book, fast forward now, defeated, post-military career, drug addict. Opened up this book blindly and it said, everything exists. Everything exists within. Look nowhere else. At that point I was looking for the answers everywhere else. Looking for the answers in these painkillers. Trying to draw the strength from my wife. Calling ex-teammates. Trying to draw what is external to affect how I felt internally. Internally I was defeated. So these words from a Rōnin reminded me of Bushido and how far I came off the path. And I made a choice that day to be something more. I don't know what it is, but to be something more. Just like I was 9 years old, I didn't know what the strength was that's stronger than hate. But I'm going to be something more. So there it was. I took all the painkillers and I dumped it down the toilet. Let me explain this to you. Painkillers, antidepressants, sleeping pills, those were my addictions, you see. Because during the war, we had to stay awake during a reconnaissance mission. So we take Adderall. And then when we come back, we're on the pager. So our instincts, we can never rest because our mind is constantly, if that pager goes, you're going to go on that mission. right? And that mission is life and death. Is that real? So what I'm saying is very hard to turn off the human senses of survival. So they'll give us, sleeping pills. And then if you're in pain, you start taking painkillers. You understand? I dumped it all. And I sat with myself for the 30 days, the first 30 days, the withdrawal symptoms, the pain, the shivering, the voices became louder. And I studied mind and body, right? So I remember there was during a certain phase of my military career, we just came out of Basilan Island where we fought the Abu Sayyaf, right, in southern Philippines. And we went into mountain warfare training where we were training in the Himalayas. It was in this training, it was over a month of training with the Indian Commando Forces. Cliff assaults, free climbing with equipment, machine guns, in this rigorous environment, 18,500 feet, no oxygen up there. Training at that intensity, commandos. On the weekends, we would be exhausted. So, guys want to sleep. But for the samurai, I needed to go visit the Tibetan monks. So I grabbed one of my loyal commandos and he drove me to this Tibetan monk. And because he was a commando, the monks would let him in. They usually don't let Westerners in there. And the monk asked the commando, what does he seek? Wisdom. I walked up to this monk and I said, monk, why is the world so cruel? He smiled, he came up, he grabbed my hand, he shook my hand, he pulled me out in the back. It was an open field, behind his temple. Took the stick, he drew it on the ground, he threw 2 sacks on. One was black stones and white was white stones. And for many years, he said he would sit there and he would look at this circle on the ground. And he has a bad thought. He would take a black pebble, throw it into the circle on the ground. For many years, he said. For many years, 4 years. He said it was all black. And now it's all white. I asked the monk what changed. Why? He said, you see, the world is so cruel because we're unaware of our emotions within the moments. And if we take inventory of our emotions, then we have a choice. And the world is so cruel because people are unaware of their emotions. If we had more control of our emotions, would the world not be so cruel? It's very Confucius, You wish the world be a better place. It begins with you. Then, the next weekend I came back and visited a monk and we were sitting out in this mountain range. Huge, right? Himalayas, can you imagine? So beautiful. We're up at the border of Pakistan, China, India. So beautiful. Snow up at the peaks. And this monk I sat with this monk and he reminded me how beautiful this morning was. How beautiful this day was. You say I didn't see it. I see it visually, but I wasn't there. I was trapped in pain. So I saw the ugly in everything. I wish this morning would hurry up and be over so I can go drink some coffee. Why is this monk sitting here for so long? My back's hurting. I looked at the negative things, but yeah, here he is present, and I wasn't, right? So fast forward that, throughout the weekends, I would practice with this monk and he taught me death. He had me meditate on death. That's Tibetan practice to meditate on death every morning. The samurais in Shinto practice is to meditate on death. Bushido is to meditate on death. And what that means is, for during that time, I would practice like I should have died here, I should have died here, I should have died here. Life is great. But now I practice it in a way where if this was your last day on this earth, if you're sitting there in the morning and you're embracing what is beautiful and you ask yourself in a moment of death, you say, this is my last day on this earth. Will you not savor that morning? All the things that bother you in life, would it just not go away? So the samurais, they keep death near, So these three practices alone, I wrote them down because I reflected on my journey, right? So basically when I became Rōnin, there was a certain process of rebirth where I shut down the world and I cocooned myself and I worked on myself. I shut down all my teammates. I shut down every external voice and I heard only myself. The moment of rebirth. So how does one do it, right? Like, I could say to you, hey man, don't you want to live a life that's like happy? Don't you want to be grateful? And let's just say you go outside and say, I'm grateful for everything. You really think that sticks in? There's a practice. And that draws off a discipline. A warrior who conquers himself is mightier than 1,000 times 1,000 men in 1,000 battles. Warrior. After my 23 years, I came to this crossroad. When I saw the worst in humanity, when this hate consumed me, when I dumped all the drugs and I shivered I was trying to learn meditation at that point. So I started Googling what it means, meditation, although I saw the practice during you don't need it until you need it, right? And I had so much noise in my head, so much noise. What I perceived was truth. Hate. I would wake up in the morning. So what made me who I am as a warrior of Bushido was discipline. I realized that at 11 years old. To be this commando, to be this force, you have to have discipline. You have to have extreme discipline when nobody else is looking. To sharpen yourself, to wheel your mind and body into this instrument of war. Discipline. And as I reflected, he who conquers himself is mightier than 1,000 times 1,000 men. The only way that you can conquer yourself and to move past this is the renewing of one's mind. And I realized that. So this level of discipline was going to be different, and it needs to come with a strategy. We just can't blindly walk through life, right? Doing the same things, hoping to be a better person. Waking up at the same time, popping the same pills, talking to the same people, expecting the same things out of the externals, hoping that would be different. That doesn't make any sense. So I started reflecting on the teachings of the Tibetan monks, and I started reading more about the philosophies of Bushido. Up until now, it was about combat, Budo. How can I be an effective warrior? But now it was about winning the war within me. You see, the enemy is placed in all of us. There's an enemy stronger than the external enemy, and that's the enemy you have inside. The truth that you placed on yourself, which is not even actual truth. So I had to kill this truth. And that was, I started writing down. I didn't carry the sack of stones like the monk did. I started writing down my thoughts within the moments. What bothered me? Who is the person I wish to become from this bad day? I wish to be kind. In a warrior culture, kindness is looked down upon as a weakness. But if I seek the path of peace, I must be kind. So I was that guy, right? So to practice kindness, I would go out in public places and I just wish people a great day. And I do this even to today. And I've been doing it for 6.5 years. I wake up every morning, I sit on my deck and I meditate and I take pictures of this beautiful landscape and environment. As the sun comes up, I wish everybody a beautiful day. You see, that's a practice. You wish we are all interconnected in some form or another. That's why when you give, you receive through joy, right? When you give to others, we're all interconnected. So I did, I gave. I gave back. Yeah, I wish people a great day. And some people told me, what are you, a freak? I opened up doors for people. You know, and I would take pictures of me sitting on meditation, wishing everybody a beautiful day. But let me explain to you, when I was going through withdrawals, the body shaked. The body shaked for these external drugs. The mind wanted so bad. And as I sat there every day, I would shake. I'll remind myself how beautiful this morning is. Because if I can win that morning, I can win that day. So my path to peace was, I focus on the morning. And just like a commando, I hit that thing with intensity every day, like I'm going to combat. I look at the intelligence and I hit that day just like I would hit a mission. Discipline. But this level of discipline is different. It was different from my strict upbringing. It was different from, the special forces type of discipline. This discipline was defeating myself. And that began with a higher power. It began with a higher power. So as I sat with myself, I started hearing my own voice and what is important. And what's important is to live life to the fullest. People always try to overcomplicate living. They say, too, what's the meaning of living? What's life all about? So, we complex ourselves with success, and we drive in a direction of ego, of expectations. Life is simple. A monk told me as we sat there, life is simple. Life is but a tree, life is but heaven, life is but what is. We're the one who throws the expectations on it. So as a tree, as an animal, they don't know anything else but to live as the best tree, to be the best tree it could be. This cow that's raised doesn't know anything else but to be the best cow it can be. And to live life. You ever watch a cow? I did. There's a farm behind me, right? And I watch these cows as I meditate. So simple. They have their daily routine. They just lay there in the sun, enjoy the moment. But yet here we are, in this beautiful day, thinking about other things. The externals that we can't even change, right? So it was about the renewing of one mind to accept what is. So I was that guy that woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So this is my discipline. I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would take a shower. I would go into a physiology change, which is a cold shower towards the last minute. I would change my physiology by injecting cold water into my body parts. So that means like blood has to gush into those muscles. I'm waking up instantly, right? Think about booting up a computer. So remember, I hit things with intelligence. I don't just hit things, right? And then I'll go and I'll sit in a dark deck and I focus on the breathing. I inhale through my nose, exhale all the way through my abdominal, And if you practice this, then you will feel at the end of the exhale, you will feel, you can put a name on it, but you will feel that energy. People call it stress, anxieties, pain. So basically what I do on the exhale, I hold on the exhale on this pain. And I focus in on the medicine of the earth. And I exhale the pain, right? And I do this every day, right? And I would tell you, it took me 5 years. 5 years. First time I tried to meditate, failure. I would go into meditation and I would come out more pissed off than I came into meditation. The noise was too loud. The expectations I set on myself. So I was that guy that woke up early in the morning and I would sit there, and as the sun come up, I would thank God for that day. And I'll blast a promise to the universe. I'll say it, that I will be my best self for this day. And I'll reflect on death. This was my last day. And I did that for many years. Many years. And I say around the third year, I was sitting there, frustrated, wanting to quit. And then I heard birds. You know, yeah, we hear birds, but you never really are present enough to hear how beautiful a bird is in the morning. So beautiful. They're just communicating with each other, but yet we're not there present enough to admire how beautiful this morning actually is. We are in heaven. We just don't see it because we choose to live in hell. We choose to live in hell based off of our words to ourselves and our views on life. So at that point, I looked towards the light, right? And I heard birds. And I'm practicing kindness. I'm, overly practicing kindness. I'm going out practicing kindness. And then I started getting messages like, dude, it's so kind. Wow. So what I'm saying to you is life's a choice. If you're totally aware within the moments of what you're thinking, you have a choice. You can be more than this. So I was that guy, that meditated, showed gratitude to God, and then I inject physical pain. And that's through physical training. That's what made me aware, right? And so I'll go into 3 hours of high intensity training in my dojo. And I tell you, all I listen to is positive stuff. I don't listen to the news in the morning. I listen to what is positive. Mulliganbrothers was one of the positive stuff. I tell you, I had my bad days. You're going to have your bad days. It's neuroscience. You see, what you think about today is what you're going to think about tomorrow. What you think about tomorrow, how do you break that vicious cycle? How do you calm the mind? So I was running on a treadmill and I was listening to this Dr. Joe Costanza talk, right, about mind and body connection, how that physiology actually works. I was the guy who Googled mind and body and how neuroscience works. Remember, I'm intelligent. As a Green Beret, we look at the intelligence of things. How does the mind and body work? And then I went to Tony Robbins' seminar. How he changed his physiology and how that's connected to mind and body. And I practice all these things. I practice them all. And the thing is, guys, you're going to find your own path. You're going to find what works for you, But I tell you, if you win that morning, you hit it with intensity as in combat, like your life depended on it. Then you would hit it with intelligence, wouldn't you? If your life depended on what you do, would you be smarter on how you do it? So why not live life like that? Why not win that morning? So I did. I won that morning. I won it through positive mind. Listen to positive people. listening to success stories, fulfillment, listening to what is important. You see, in today's world, we look at the externals to let it affect how we feel internally. If you get this amount of followers on YouTube, I'll be happy. If I became this successful, I had this sponsor, if I get this promotion, if I have this job, if I get this bigger house, this bigger car, see, those are expectations we place on ourselves, and those are not truth. So then you live a lie. And then you have expectations on things you can't change. Right? Like how somebody thinks of you. Right? So what do you have? Is that you have control over everything if you look within and you change your views in the world. So the renewing of one's mind. The renewing of one's mind was, I started reading a lot of literature on how the mind and body is connected, and why do we look at the negatives in life? It's in our DNA. As hunter-gatherers, as cavemen, our ancestors, they had to rely on this natural ability to survive. Handed down through genetics, generations, 200,000 plus years of evolution, starving, dying, here we are. We're in this modern world with this primitive mind. Always looking at survival, always looking at the dangers. So yeah, you're going to look at the negatives in the world, right? Because we're a primitive mind. So how do you change this? You have to renew the mind. You have to renew the mind. So now, all right, so survival back in the old days is what? They go out and they fortify food, right? They can get eaten by a freaking saber-toothed tiger and get stomped on by elephants, right? So it's truly a survival instinct. So fast forward this into this domesticated world. What's the threat now? What's the threat? You know, when I was working in Malaysia, right, I had to live in these villages with these tribal people, indigenous people, you know, multiplied throughout the world, not just in Malaysia. I lived indigenous people all around the world, all the way to Africa, South America, Asia. Indigenous people, you know. No electricity, no running water. Some of them have to walk half a mile just to get running water. You just get water in a bucket and carry it back. And we live in this world where I could pull up to a gas station, fill up my car, and drive. Well, they had to walk. And I could turn on a sink and there's free-flowing water, endless, you know. But yet here I am, hating the world. Not happy. Everything's so convenient. And these tribal people, I tell you, I've never seen a race so happy, and this is multiplied throughout the world. It wasn't just in Malaysia. These tribal people all around the world, hunter-gatherers, you know, still getting up early in the morning to go hunt, bring back food, a community of people, a tribe. Really happy. So I thought about it, and the reason why things are the way it is we have this primitive mind, and what is driving today's world? Social media. Social media. The world is so fast-paced now. So we put these expectations on ourselves of what we think is happy and what's success, right? And I tell you, you know, I being who I am, I started traveling around America. So here I am working on myself, a new mindset, listening to doctors talk, going to Tony Robbins seminars. And look, it didn't work at first. You know, I still woke up and you know, I'm like, what a dickhead, right? And then I'm like, I mean, I wish you nothing but the best in life, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you for taking the time to call me that. See, I was trying to change my mind, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working. So here I am, you know, practicing all this, going around America, and the power of the universe, you know, working on yourself. Then History Channel called me, and then I did 3 seasons on the History Channel. But I wanted to tell you this because people, when I was the first day in the History Channel, movie star trailer, they pick you up, drive you 500 meters, 500 meters to set, makeup artists, 15 cameras on you. But I was in a place of darkness. Door is 15 yards away is a pulled door. Man is about 5 yards away. Blade is to his right hand. You see, it was a knife show. I could funnel my enemy into this position here because it's so natural, right? To look at that because in my world, it was about survival. And I couldn't move past that energy. And here I am, 15 cameras, What people don't know is I'm super shy and insecure. Think about it. I was raised, spitted on, told I didn't belong. You think I just have this self-confidence? I didn't. I was defeated. I was working on myself. And here I am, rising star, in international, television, broadcasts through 15 different countries. Never saw it. Never enjoyed it. And my wife and I, we would travel in between filming and we would continue to train. And then Infinity Ward, Call of Duty called me. And they asked us to do motion capture. And eventually we became a character on there still. Never saw it. Traveling around the world, giving keynote speaking, helping others now, working on myself, trying to work on myself every day. And then people are like, can you help me? Can you talk to these people? Can you help them? Can you help these veterans? Me? I'm working on myself. But I did. I helped as much as I could. And now that I'm a video game character, why not help? Why not help the youth? Why not help them? Why not give them a direction? So I do. I go to high schools and I talk to the high school kids. I talk to elementary school kids now. What is your truth? To live a life that's full. So as I was working, and then now we test guns for Springfield Armory. What an amazing journey. What an amazing journey. And now that I look back, it started with me. You want the world to be a better place, and it starts with you. And he who conquers his own self is mightier than 1,000 times, 1,000 men in 1,000 battles. And understand in life, you are your own enemy. Right? Too often we look at the externals on that guy is a dickhead and this guy lied to me. Well, because you have expectations on the imperfections. Confucianism is about that. Is we are born flawed. It's just the Bible. We are born flawed, and it is within us to be better throughout our lives. Right? To be better. And at that point, I could not be better because my mind did not allow me to transcend there. So if you wish to walk through life judging, hating, insulting others, then understand you're drinking that poison, not them. And Taoism is about that, is to understand that we must live in harmony with each other, to show kindness. And I ask you this, if we show kindness and we work on ourselves every day, would the world not be a better place? Because that's what I'm doing. I work on myself every day, and now I teach the way of Bushido. So as a warrior now of Bushi, I travel around the United States training law-abiding citizens. Now we're well known in America. And we teach major police departments from big department SWAT teams. We're part of counter-narcotics, training those guys. Training the way of Bushido, the code, to show compassion. As I walk around, I'm training these law enforcement officers, I start with the Bushido code. Compassion. To be this lethal energy, you have to be right in mind and spirit. So you need to show compassion, right? So through my teachings, I teach the Bushido code now across America. Our training is very popular. We are in high demand, and our training venues are booked out for years. And I teach the way of the blade through a Street Fighter course. Street Fighter course was a course I drafted off of my understanding of violence in a permissive and non-permissive environment. So at a certain stage in the war, I had to work in low-vis reconnaissance. So as a singleton working in these places, you have to be extremely lethal. But you have to be smart. You're smart in what you do. So the Street Fighter course teaches them to be smart. Through time, distance, and change of direction, you could pick up a person. You have to understand threat, the distance and timing of an attack. If I take away your distance, I take away your timing. I create timing through angles of the attack. So my teaching is very martial art based in the teachings of Budo. In today's society, in martial arts, what we perceive as martial arts is MMA, is it not? Going into a cage and fighting. But yet we take that translation of martial arts and we put it into the real world where there's guns, knives, and threats. Multiply that by my environment is, if they find out you're a Westerner in this Muslim state country, then you'll be drug out in the streets and hung, right? So it was that level of real in these environments. So my training has to be just that, lethal. So in war staging periods, in any country, you have war staging periods. That's what made the civilization the way it is. But after a war time, how do you practice being a warrior? How do you practice being a warrior if you're a regular civilian? How do you practice that? Through a dojo. So many years of training in the dojos does the lethality not wash down, because now it's confined to what is a dojo, confined to what is a mat, confined to what's a ring, confined to what's a cage. These movements are universal, obviously, the martial arts, and it can be applied, but the mindset isn't there of lethality, right? So I teach that stage of lethality, to go there in speed and accuracy, right? So I teach in the modern way of weapons, which is the gun, the blade, strategy, distance, timing, angles, utilizing cover, concealment, stealth, speed, interlocking fire. So I utilize a lot of the tactics I learned, and now I teach this to what I perceive as the good, which is the people that raise their hand to protect and serve community. Because I realize that if I teach these people, then they can protect their own communities. And if I force multiply this, then in time, we could safeguard our own country and protect our own communities. That's what I did as a Green Beret. Force multiply, train armies to take out dictators. So why not train our law-abiding citizens so they can better protect their families and themselves and their loved ones? And as the crime rises, why not train the innocent so they can defend themselves against the evil? And why not train our law enforcement officers and our military? That's sworn oath. So that's what I teach. I teach the way of Bushido. And in a warrior's path, Bushido, I'm in the do stage, which is to give. And I give that through education. I give that through sharing. And I give that through my struggles. All right? Because one will never find themselves unless they're willing to walk through the valley of pain. You'll never find your own truth until you fail. Right? Get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. I want to say something. When I was a wee little boy, my uncle brought me to Dairy Queen. You know, as we sat there, I was so defeated, 11 years old, you know, real weak. My uncle asked me what a champion was. And at that point in my life, I reached out to what I wasn't. I said, a champion's a winner, uncle. My uncle reminded me that day that a loser can keep on going if he continues to win. A champion's the person that gets spit on, flicked off, pushed down, said they don't belong here, but yet they rise. A champion keeps a promise to the one they love the most. A champion doesn't allow the conditions or circumstance to influence. They influence the person they wish to be by the actions they take every day. And champion lives by a powerful code. At 11. So that was the way, the path. That was Bushido. Now as a Rōnin, you know, now as I look back as a successful entrepreneur, as a celebrity in the video game industry, now I look back, you know, and I'm grateful for everything, for it all. Because it's through the struggles that one finds himself. You know, as a boy that escaped genocide, born in war, family imprisoned, murdered. The visions I saw as a child, hopelessness, you know, sleeping in a refugee camp, rats. You didn't even have a bed, you know, on the floor, sleeping in the mud. Came from absolutely nothing, started our lives all over again in a country that didn't even accept us. Pushed us down. You don't belong here. You know, and as I look back, what is more powerful than that story as an American? What's this country found upon? A dream, an ideal. And your actions will take you there, right? And for me I'm grateful for it all. You know, when I was going through and I wasn't accepted, I was told, you're nothing. When I saw only hate, when I saw the worst in humanity, I'm thankful for it all. How can you become the person that you wish to be unless you live the life that you wish not to live? How can you be brave unless you felt fear? How can you be strong unless you were once weak? You see? So now that I am this image of strength, successful entrepreneur, successful husband, marriage, successful in life, I'm thankful for it all. Because without the struggles, there's no way I can become and forge myself into the person that I wish to be. Because I would never have a vision of who I want to be unless first I have made those mistakes. I have lost my way. Because first I look at the externals and the addictions, live a life of one addiction to the next. How can you wish to be something more unless you live that? And how can you say you're brave unless you're willing to walk a path that's true to yourself? I want to explain this, you know, in combat, you have courage. Courage. In a gunfight and close quarters gunfight and war, conflict, you have to have courage. But let me explain that. Courage in war and courage in life are two different things. Because when I got out, I didn't have courage. Courage to me is to live a life that's true to yourself, regardless of what other people say or think about you. Regardless if you doubt yourself, do you have the courage? Lao Tzu, a philosopher, back in ancient China, 500 BC, And Lao Tzu was said that this philosopher, record keeper of the emperor, Zen master, it said that he got so tired of living in this corrupted government where the emperor seek to starve and oppress their own people, murder, a tyrant. And Lao Tzu here is this record keeper. And he said that Lao Tzu had enough, so he got on a water buffalo. He traveled all the way to the end of this dynasty. And there was a guard that was standing there, and then the guard said, "Stop, who are you?" And when he realized that this is royalty, he got down to his knees and he asked for forgiveness to Lao Tzu. And he asked for the purpose of Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu wished to leave this political grounds. He told her how corrupted this government is. The guard said, "I will let you pass if you give me wisdom." And it was said within this moment that Lao Tzu wrote down the words that were later known as Taoism. So he was the father of Taoism. And Lao Tzu says, "A journey of 1,000 miles began with a single step." Something so simple, right? So simple. A journey of 1,000 miles began with a single step, but the preparation for that step, you must live the life that you didn't want to live to transform your first step into becoming the person you wish to be. I was weak as a child. What was the first steps of becoming this warrior? Right? So throughout the phases of your life, you must ask yourself that. And Lao Tzu, understand our life is a journey of 1,000 miles. And that first step begins with intelligence. And how do you become intelligent? By first living the life that you don't wish to live, by seeing what you don't want to be. So what I'm saying to you is life is just that. It's about making mistakes. It's about failing. And throughout this process of growth in knowledge, you become the person that you wish to be. And that takes work. And if you get stuck, then realize that you're doing the same shit over and over again. You're expecting things to change when your daily routine is the same and your mind is just the same, but yet you expect this change. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my journey of 1,000 miles. And step by step, I walk my journey, right, into my last breath in this world. And what people don't realize is that when you walk through your journey of life, it's education. The world is your teacher. But the thing is, not all of us have the courage to live this life because we're afraid of failures. We're afraid of mistakes. We're afraid of hardships because that's a survival mindset. But what if I were to tell you to place it all on the line, bet it all over your own existence, to live your truth? And I'm grateful for that. Because through my struggles, I found my truth. And that willed me to become the person I am today.
I want to say a massive thank you for doing this video with us. We have some amazing content and projects coming out with Tulan that we've not yet released. and some very interesting pieces that I hope you guys will enjoy. Everybody who supported us at Mulliganbrothers.com and bought the t-shirts, the journals, and the poster, thank you so much. The journals are being restocked right now, so thank you to everybody who has supported us with that. And yes, I am not in the studio today. I am traveling around the world at the moment, filming projects for you guys, so I hope you enjoyed the content that is coming out. Yeah, and I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been involved in these projects, everybody who's helped film these projects, and Neve, who comes on all these projects with me as well. Thank you to everybody. Have a blessed and productive day, and drop a comment down below. What was your favorite part of this interview? I'll see you in the next one. Peace.